Hello, and welcome to Still Buffering, a sister's guide to teens through the ages. I am Riley Smurl.
I'm Sydney McRoy.
And I'm Taylor Smurl.
Hello, sisters.
Hello.
How's the summer treating you so far?
Just sleeping until 1:30, going to bed at 2:30, the usual.
Man, living the life.
I know, that sounds nice. See, in the adult world, we just keep working.
Yeah.
I'm pretty close to being there, so I'm enjoying this one last year where I'm not.
Well, that's nice. Have you been watching any TV?
Are you already doing this?
I don't know. It just seemed like an appropriate transition.
Yes.
I like how even when City does it really smoothly, you feel the need to call her out on it. Like, that was the most perfect, innocuous slide in. So we're going to talk about some TV shows. No. I got to clock this.
Usually we take a few minutes and we make some goose, and it was just like, wow, we're 1 minute in. Sydney's just going for it.
I feel like with our topic this week, we're going to have a lot to say.
That's
Okay.
true.
I
think Sydney in particular has a lot to say.
I do. That's it. I'm just very eager. Because one of our listeners suggested this, right?
Yeah,
You saw this?
today.
Today. We're right on it. You make a suggestion, we jump.
on the Twitter.
And specifically, one of our listeners suggested that we should talk about the differences between old school Archie comics
And Riverdale, the new hit teen TV show.
Exactly. Which I would love to talk about forever because I love Archie.
And I love Riverdale.
Taylor, where do you stand here?
I mean, I am of the ironic generation, and so I am fully aware that Riverdale is absolute garbage TV, and I watch every episode and thoroughly enjoy it. I am on both of your sides at the same time and somewhere else completely different.
It's hard to convince people, and we're not just going to talk about Archie, by the way, in case there's anybody who's like, I don't listen or read, I have nothing to do with any of this particular brand of
Entertainment.
nerdery. And so I don't want to listen to this. There's been a lot of rebooted 90s things recently. Shows and movies and whatnot. So I think there's a lot to talk about. But I think Archie is a good place to start because it is such a stark change, such a contrast to the comic, which, of course, Archie comics are many decades old. And so when they first came out, they were reflective of a time period that I obviously don't connect to.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what it's like.
Like the 60s.
Yeah, well, even before that, Archie's predate that. And, like, I never rode around in a jalopy and, went to, like, a debutante ball. And, I was never part of a pep club.
Wore poodle skirts.
Exactly. So there's stuff, old school Archie that I've read. I think it's odd. It's funny. I love it. I love all Archie. It's hard for me to, except for the zombie stuff.
Except for Riverdale.
Except for Riverdale and the zombie stuff, because in the zombie stuff they die and turn into zombies, and that's really hard for me. That makes me cry.
That's where Taylor stands on this debate.
Zombies. When are they zombies? I like them then. Sid, I always read your Archie comics, and one thing that I guess you would think that this kind of updates with every generation because it has been around for so long, but that's super not true, yeah? Like, I feel like the same kind of moral compass, the same ideals, like, they're, whether you're reading an Archie from the 40s or the 90s, there's kind of the same, like, uber wholesomeness. Like, one of my favorite issues is the one where, like, Jughead, they think he's gone punk, but it turns out he's just gone undercover to, like, research the punks for an article, and everyone's like, oh no, he's punk. Like, it's like just as alarmed. It's not trying to communicate with the current generation necessarily.
No, you're exactly right. I think, and that's a great example because there's an older one, a much older Archie comic that is about Jughead going hippie. and it's the exact same plot line. Everybody's really upset, except for he actually did go hippie. It wasn't to go undercover, but everybody's really upset because they're like,
What happened to Jug?
Like, he doesn't have shoes on. He's like carrying a flower. And I mean, he's not really that far removed from Jughead. He's just like laying around, kind of being chill. which is pretty much what Jughead does, just with less.
No.
He had less hamburgers, I think. But I mean, it was the same kind of thing. Like there was this alarm.
Veggie burgers.
Exactly. There was this alarm from all of his friends, like, oh no, he's gone hippie. We can't let that happen. He can't be one of those hippies. But you're right. I think another good example is you'll see in the newer Archies, they had gone over anytime anybody was wearing roller skates and covered them up with roller blades.
Are you serious?
Yes. Just to update them, just to make them look a little cooler. You can see cell phones subtly try to change later on, or like the existence of cell phones all of a sudden, that kind of stuff within the exact same story. So nothing about the life or the things that teenagers are interested in, or the way that teenagers talk, or the way they interact with each other. None of that changes in the Archie world. It's all still the same. They're just wearing rollerblades now.
Because blading is the new craze.
And I don't think that's not a fair. I don't even want to say criticism, because I love that. I have no problem. This is not me criticizing Archie comics. I adore them. I like that they're safe. I like that there's a consistency there. They are my constant. Archie comics are my constant in this universe. I can always rely on Archies to have stories that are not upsetting or scary or sad, and have happy endings, and maybe a joke, maybe a light joke.
They're all very wholesome.
And I don't mind that. There are newer, of course, updated versions of Archie comics that deal with current issues, but
And then
true.
we get to Riverdale.
And then there's Riverdale.
Which is, let me tell you, great. If you have never read an Archie comic and you're just like, hey, what's this hip new teen show? You're gonna love it, because you don't have any connection to any of the characters. And while I've read all of the Archie comics pretty much that you ever owned, because then I later owned them, I just love the teen drama.
I have a really hard time believing that people can watch it, though, with no knowledge of the comic, because I would spend the whole time going, why are these kids named Jughead and Jellybean? Give me the backstory. I need to know the backstory on that. Is that never going to be discussed? I give up on this.
Is Jellybean in it?
She's mentioned.
Yeah, they reference her.
Okay. She came along later.
Yeah, she's mentioned quite a few times.
Yeah,
with completely serious faces, like, oh no, Jellybean.
That's what it is. It's like we're having really serious, because everything around Jughead is so serious and dramatic, but it's Jughead, and everybody calls him that. I'm like,
Everyone's like,
couldn't
hey,
have
Juggy,
changed.
what's going on? He's
It's like, why does this make sense?
and he goes on to make a really serious emo monologue about how he's a weirdo and he can't help it. He's just weird. Have you ever
I wear
seen
this
him without
stupid
the hat
hat.
on? That's weird. I'm not normal.
I think you just quoted that like word for word, didn't you?
I did.
Okay.
I had stopped watching it because it was hurting me emotionally and physically, and Justin made me watch that clip. He was like, "This is what you're missing," and he showed it to me on YouTube, and I was like, "Nope, not missing anything. Not missing anything. Why do they have to state that? How can remember show, not tell? That's the heart of this, right? Just like show that you're
It's
kind
a TV
of
show.
an outcast. You don't have to tell everybody like, hey, in case you didn't get it,
I'm weird.
what does he say? Subversive humor is the way I cope with the world, or something. And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I know, man. That's like just be. Thank you, thank you. Just put that in subtitles underneath in case we missed it.
But that's the thing. It's that everybody else in the cast is generally like pretty nice to him, Like
Yeah.
there's like one time that I think a jock calls him Donnie Darko, which is like 50-50. Kind of maybe a compliment, maybe an insult. That's a good movie. But
great
so
movie.
he's got to say it because no one in that cast is written to show it. Like
That's true. Like even when he has to go to like the scary school on like the south side of town, he's like, these are just my people. This is where I'm gonna fit in. You think it's gonna be like terrible for him because it's like the kids from like the quote unquote wrong side of the tracks, and they show up to lunch and they're like, we're gonna save Juggy, and it's like he's like made friends with everyone there, and they're all like crowded around him laughing at his jokes.
yeah, it's like no one understands me. I'm an outcast. Why did everybody come to my birthday party? It's like this is
Yeah, he gets mad when he has too big of a party with too many friends. It's like, no, I didn't want these many people here. I don't want a real party. I'm supposed to be an
Yeah.
outcast. Don't make me feel like I'm popular.
But we should probably say, just in case, spoilers probably, maybe,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, probably, definitely.
I mean, it's been out for a while.
It finished, like the whole season finished like 3 weeks ago. It's all on Netflix now. You can watch it.
And I have to say, I think the most enjoyable thing that came for me from the entire series was the Netflix promo that is just Jughead eating a hamburger for like 5 minutes. Better than the whole series for me. I'm sorry.
That's true.
I just don't. I think the problem is, I was trying to think of like a storyline that I remember well that fit into the 90s. I think this storyline from an Archie comic fits well as like a representation of teens in the 90s. There's a plot line. It's probably from a Betty and Veronica because it's a Betty-centric plot, or maybe in a Betty's diary. I don't know.
That's all Cindy read were the Betty-centric plots.
I love the Betty-centric plots. And Betty and Veronica both want to enter a music video competition where you make your own music video and send it in to MTV, and if they like it, then they will let you star in a music video. I don't remember the pop star. So someone made up. The pop stars were always made up.
But kind of similar to real pop stars.
Like almost the name of a pop star and then changed one letter or something.
Like Dustin Timberwolf.
Exactly. That's exactly what they would do in Archie Comics. And I forget which one it was. But like Veronica, like, because she's rich, like pays for like a whole crew to come, and she's got like her costumes designed by a world famous costume designer and all this stuff, and like the song is written by this composer and blah blah blah, and she has this really high-tech beautiful video made, and so Betty's all like frustrated and is like, I'll never be able to do this because I don't have money, and she's all sad, and so she goes to work off her frustrations on the basketball court, you know, because she's athletic.
Because she's Betty.
She's Betty. And Archie shows up and he's like, you know, you look really great playing basketball. Let's just make a video of that. And so they make a music video of her playing basketball. And they send them both in, and guess who wins?
Betty.
Of course. And she wins her music video. A story like that super entertained me when I was a teenager. I read it and thought, what a good story I just read. I enjoyed the plot. I enjoyed the message. I enjoyed the pictures. I enjoyed this. And I am pleased with the way I spent the, 3.5 minutes it took me to read it. I feel like perhaps, Riley, you and your generation would not feel the same.
I mean, just like, for example, the main plot line of this whole season of Riverdale was that Jason Blossom was murdered. And they're all trying to figure out who did it. And it's narrated by Jughead, who sits in a gloomy Pop's chocolate shop typing on his MacBook the story of Jason Blossom.
Also, and this is a spoiler, I guess, there's incest.
Yeah, like...
yeah, weird incest. Like I don't know, like, what?
Like, once confirmed and once kind of hinted at, which is like, okay.
Oh, that's true. There's multiple accounts of incest, possibly, yeah.
Yeah, because I guess the Coopers are also Blossoms. And
you shouldn't have said that in front of Sydney. I don't think she can handle that truth.
I can't.
I
can't with this.
The Mama Blossom and Daddy Blossom knew that Coopers were Blossoms, and they let Polly date Jason because they wanted, like, purely Blossom babies.
Ew. Oh.
Right? Like, that's what I got from that.
Yeah.
Like, they found out about it. They were fine with it.
Like, they're like, well, this will work out in our best interests.
Yeah. Like, we can hand over our maple syrup company to these incest twins.
Which is actually heroin?
Heroin.
Sure. Sure, whatever.
The best part of that whole TV series was when, again, spoiler alert, they find out that Clifford Blossom, the Blossom parent, has killed Jason Blossom. Mm-hmm. It's the one who murdered him. And Clifford finds out that they know, and they're coming to arrest him, and he hangs himself in the barn where they keep all of their jugs of quote-unquote maple syrup, and they go and find him out there, and they bust open a case of maple syrup, and it's just wrapped packages of heroin covered in maple syrup.
I don't see how
I don't know if you've ever had barrel-aged heroin, but
I don't see how the music video plot is any worse than what you have just described.
I mean, well, is it?
No, but here's the difference: is the music video plot has an underlying moral story behind it. That, hey, it's not about how much money you have or anything like that. It's about how much heart you have.
Exactly.
Like, you know, like and all of the Archie comics reduce down to a very wholesome message. Riverdale does none of that. You know, people that are good have bad things happen to them. You know, like, just because you're honest doesn't mean that the right things come your way. Like, there's a lot, which I think is more of a relatable truth. I think it's more of a truth. It's less comforting, but that's always kind of the dichotomy with the gritty reboot. It's like Superman. Like, Superman is a wholesome character, and I think anytime you try to take him dark to make him more relevant, you lose Superman. So you either have to be okay with that, or you have to just keep him Boy Scout for the rest of his, you know, cartoon and comic existence, which I think is why he's such a problematic character to work with, like, in modern days. I feel like with Archie, you had to throw all that stuff under the bus and just make something entirely new.
Yeah.
I get that. And I mean, let me say, I think that there are a lot of people who would confuse that, or who would try to use this as grounds for evidence that the world is a darker place, or that teens are darker or less well behaved or less wholesome, or whatever you want to put it, than they used to be. And I don't think that at all. I don't believe that. I think that's like a lie that we tell ourselves as we get older, to excuse all of our past bad behavior and say, well, it's just certainly not as bad as these kids today. And I certainly do not have that outlook. I don't think that's true. I think it was probably less honest is the difference. And now we're trying to say out loud in more venues that, you know, of course, bad things happen to good people. And yes, everybody has flaws, everybody has faults, everybody's capable of doing both good things and bad things. And teenagers are aware of this and participating in this same world that the rest of us are. So I know that it's truthful. It's just sometimes the point of books and movies and comic books and TV shows and all this wonderful entertainment we have, sometimes the point is to escape the real world for a little bit and just go hang out in Pop's chocolate shop.
But you know what?
And have a hamburger and joke about how many he ate today, and then hop in the jalopy and go to the sock hop. Can't we just do that?
But you know what the most wholesome part about Riverdale is? That the season ends on this note, and it makes me very happy because it's how I always believed Archie comics should have turned out, is that Betty and Jughead are in love and together and happy, and Archie and Veronica are together and happy and in love.
No.
And they're all four are sitting in a booth together at Pop's.
Well, that's not like
it's not
what
how
happens
the
at the
season ends
very
exactly, but very close to the end. They're all sitting in the booth together.
That is not okay, and here's why. And I may have said this before. Jug would never do that because he loves Archie and truly believes the best person for him is Betty, and he would never. First of all, there was never any indication that the two were romantically involved in the comic book, and secondly, he would never, because that's his pal Archie, and Betty's the best girl for him from Jug's view.
No, but Archie
and Jug would never do that.
But Archie is never always been all about Betty. Part of Archie's always liked Veronica more, and as much as I love Betty, you have to admit that is true.
Well, I have to step in for the Fiona Staples Archie reboot, which I don't know if she's the only artist that works on that now. But I think that kind of hit a better middle ground because, you know, yes, it's cool for, like, teens maybe want things that are a bit more, like, in line with reality and not lying to them. But not everything is heroin, maple syrup, and murder.
The new catchphrase for Riverdale, heroin, maple syrup, and murder.
I think, well, like, no, you know, like that comic reboot, it's like, I think they made it more relevant and updated it without having to add in all that crazy teen drama. Like, I like the fact that Jughead is asexual in that comic book. Like, that's a more important representation to have out there. And in that sense, then he was a bigger fan of Betty versus Veronica. Mm-hmm. But I think that, like, Riverdale is cool for one thing, but we kind of were dancing around the fact that a comic was remade in a really smart way that kind of did something that I think would have made both of you happy. Right?
That's true.
Yes, that is a really good point.
Yeah.
I will say in the most recent issue of Archie, a drag race occurred, which I thought was very strange.
Yeah.
And
like with cars or with queens?
I thought you meant like the RuPaul assortment.
No.
That would be awesome.
I thought that's what you meant.
No, like
Oh my gosh, if Archie meets RuPaul in a future comic, I'll die.
No, like a Grease style Archie versus Reggie. They actually use the term racing for pinks.
Well, that's a little
slips.
weird.
Ownership
Okay.
papers.
Yeah.
To quote Grease now.
Right.
Yeah, so they actually use that term, and there's actually a drag race occurring, and I was like, what? And then there's a crash. I won't give anything away. It's very dramatic, but I was like, why or where or what? And I love it. I love that book. I'm not criticizing that book. I think it's amazing. But it did strike me as like, whoa, drag racing? Do you guys still do that?
No. What?
You race cars, and the winner gets the cars.
But why would you let someone take your car?
Because they beat you in a race, obviously, Riley. That's the point of drag racing.
No. What?
I thought it was very strange. And again, I don't want to criticize this book because I love it. I love the story and the art and everything. I love it. I think it's a great book. I just thought it was so modern, and that seemed like such a throwback. Which maybe that was intentional. Maybe that was the point.
Were they trying to get that sweet, sweet Fast and the Furious crowd on board with Archie? Maybe?
Maybe so.
I recently binge watched all those movies because I don't know what I do with my life. And there's a lot of that.
That's like the focus of those, right? Lots of cars racing.
No, I mean,
are they racing
like
for pinks?
The first few, they're racing cars, and then they kind of like are like, it's sort of like heist movies for a little while. They try to rebrand it a couple times. I feel like you know, I mean, it's still like just big tough guys and lots of explosions. But you know, they're not always just in cars. They branch out from the cars and let other things explode in some of the future movies.
Like, are there like they race planes? Do they race trains?
There's some submarines involved.
They race submarines.
Wow.
You know,
Are there drag races, as in drag queens?
no, they're not. No,
That's a bummer.
That's the best kind of drag race. I
yes,
think we all can agree.
I would agree.
No, I just thought it was, again, I don't want to act like I'm criticizing that book because I agree with you, Tay. I think it's great and it makes me very happy and I enjoy it immensely. But I did think, and maybe that's just like a call out to the old days of Archie. Hey, remember how Archie started back in like the 40s when people actually did things like drag racing, I guess.
Well, it strikes that middle ground where you could still believe that someone is named Jellybean in this world, but it's a little bit more relatable.
Exactly. Yeah, it makes total sense.
I will say that is one of the least believable parts of Riverdale, if you can rank them in least believable to most believable, that there is a child out there named Jellybean.
I don't know. I could make a whole list.
I will say it's Skeet Ulrich that is Jughead's dad, right? It's the actor from
like an old teen show, right?
Well,
From an old teen show? Are you talking about from Scream?
No, I'm talking about one of them was on
Luke
90210.
That's Luke Perry. That's Archie's dad.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's from 90210. Skeet Ulrich is from Scream. We've also got
An old 90s show.
Oh, it's 90210, not an old 90s show.
No, it is. I thought you were talking about Skeet Ulrich being from Scream.
Is the original Scream not an old 90s movie?
It's an amazing 90s movie.
But is it not an old 90s
we
movie?
thought the horror genre. Anyway, what were you saying, Taylor?
there's also Molly Ringwald. So we
That's
have
true.
I think we have teen icons of the past few
Did you not know
generations.
Who's she?
Archie's mom.
Oh, I never saw that.
Really?
Aw.
Yeah.
She's
love
in
Molly
like one
Ringwald.
episode.
She's also my Franny from The Stand.
Your Franny.
My
Yo,
Franny.
Franny.
I will say
Alright.
this. This is the last thing I'll say about Riverdale. I guess it's probably better than that movie they made based on Archie's. Remember
Wasn't
that
that
movie
based
from
on Archie?
that was
Back-
the 90s movie.
Back to Riverdale?
Yeah, like late
Yeah.
80s, early 90s, I think, somewhere in that time frame.
Are you talking about the Archie cartoon?
No, I'm talking about the one where like they all come back for a reunion and Jughead raps.
No, I have not seen that.
Yeah, it's not.
I remember
It's not
watching
good.
the Archie cartoon, like episodes of Archie cartoons that are super old that you gave me, and I was like, "That is so cool! I love these comics so much."
Yeah.
And I watched them, I was like,
Well, there other things have been rebooted than Archie, and I want to talk about
Yes.
them. But before I do,
"Let's check the group message."
what we got over there today?
We have a Jumbotron today. Do you want to tell us about it, Sydney?
I would love to tell you about it. It is for Meredith. So this is a message for Meredith from her older sister, Hillary. Sisters.
Wow.
Like us.
There are other sisters in this world.
We're not the only sisters. Woo! Hillary and Meredith are sisters too. And Hillary says, "Happy birthday, Meredith. This is the best birthday present I could come up with. Thank you for introducing me to Mabim Bam and Still Buffering." I'm sure she means especially Still Buffering.
Yeah, mostly Still Buffering.
She doesn't put that in here, so I'll
to
add
Mabim
that.
Bam and Still Buffering, which is the new best podcast.
That's what she. Yeah,
I can. Me to.
I see. Like, it's not in the message, but I know that intent is there.
Right.
I know you hate sappy stuff, but I appreciate everything you do, and you may be a sarcastic jerk most of the time.
Whoa.
Whoa. Whoa, Hill. Most of the time, but I'm glad to have you as my sister, and I would be much worse off without you. Love, Hillary. Well, happy birthday, Meredith.
I just wanted to be clear that Hillary said that about you, Meredith. That was not us.
Yeah, we did not say that. We don't think you're a jerk.
Well, hey, I'm a sarcastic jerk most of the time, so I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I still have sisters to talk to me.
Heck, we do a podcast with you.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you have a delightful birthday, Meredith.
Yeah.
You know, maybe work on being a sarcastic jerk a little less.
I guess that's what like your sister thinks of you.
Never change. Never.
Now, like I said, a lot of other things have been rebooted more recently. One that I am indulging in at the moment is Twin Peaks. Which, yes, is wonderful and amazing. You probably haven't watched much of it.
I've never watched any of it, like original or new.
Let me ask you, is that something teenagers watch at all?
No. I mean, like I've heard you talk about it because when we were in Washington, you talked about it.
Yeah.
But I have never heard a single one of my fellow teen peers that has watched it.
I mean, and that was kind of before our generation, Sid. Like, I think it was super cool. Like, when I was in college, like, I watched Twin Peaks with my roommates at the time. Like, that was like a thing that was like like an old thing that was in to be aware of. You know,
no, you're very right. I think it's probably more of a college thing because David Lynch is like his whole, you know, all of his movies and stuff. I think it's something that you get into in college, like really deeply for like a moment. And then like some people are like, yeah, I did that. I didn't really get it. I'm kind of moving on. And then other people, like, I think I'm in the camp where I was like, I love this stuff and I am in this forever. And then when Twin Peaks came back out, I got really excited. I don't think it's really relevant to teens. I will say there was one thing Justin and I were talking about that's really interesting about it is the old Twin Peaks. If you watch it, it draws a lot on like soap opera motifs. Like if you watch an episode, there are a lot of these like long, like overly like melodramatic type scenes, like overwrought with emotion that are very much drawing on like the soap operas that were super popular at the time. Soap operas are not nearly as popular now.
That's true.
So, because I've watched the show and I keep trying to think like there are differences. What are some of these differences? And that's one of the big differences is that they've moved away from that a little bit because it would not connect as strongly with new audiences today as it did at the time, which I thought was just an interesting comment on our culture. Like, I still get that soap opera reference, but Riley, have you ever watched a soap opera?
No. I know there's one like where the theme song is like an hourglass, right?
yes, that one.
Right?
I think that's the Days of Our Lives is what you're
and
talking
you know why
like
I think I know
the hourglass.
You know why I think I know about that one? Because in Friends, Joey was on the Days of Our Lives as Dr. Drake Ramore.
That's your only reference. See, I was an All My Children kind of girl. I watched All My Children, so Erica Kane, you never knew what she was going to do.
Right. Because I knew all about those soaps.
I watched a little bit of Passions, but only because Spike watched Passions, and I wanted to be hip with the the Spike lingo.
But there are a lot of other more teen-centric things that I think are being rebooted now.
I mean, Full House was rebooted into Fuller House, which I guess has 2 seasons now that I thought would only have 1, but now it has 2.
Yeah.
I've only seen the first one.
It's not stopping. I think it did well. I think
it's
it was
not
pretty
stopping.
popular.
Well, and this is, I think both of these, though, it's interesting because, like, the Riverdale is very much a fly-in-the-face, like, gritty, quote-unquote, reboot of Archie. the Twin Peaks and the Full House, which I think have something in common, strangely enough, is they're both things that kind of pay homage to what you liked about it all along. Like, I think, to me, it's like Twin Peaks still has the same feeling. It's almost more of a reduced, like, self-aware Twin Peaks, and the Full House is very self-aware of like making little jokes that you're only going to get if you watched it. Like, it's made for the fans, not to try to appeal to new fans. I think it's way more trying to give something back to the people that loved them 10, 20 years ago.
Right.
I think that's very true. I think you see that. I think in Twin Peaks, I think you get some of that, but I think that since it's David Lynch, he's also going to put you through, like, if you're a big fan of Twin Peaks, you're also going to like maybe watch Agent Dale Cooper go through a lot that you're like, please come back. I need you, Coop.
I'm having a hard time. I watched the first 2 episodes, and I won't spoil anything because it just came out, but I'm having a hard time.
Yeah. And so I think he's going to put you through your paces also, but definitely on Full House, they're like, we know who's watching this show.
Yeah.
We know what you want to see. And we're going to give it to you. We're going to give you a how rude.
We're going to give you a how rude.
We're going to give you a cut it out.
I think that's mainly because the focus for those audiences now would not be teenagers now. Like, they're not trying to attract teenagers because the people that were watching them were probably teenagers when they first came out. So now they're trying to get into like those adults that might even have kids now. That's like, they're just now showing their kids like first episodes of Full House or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, their audience originally is probably all grown up now. But Riverdale doesn't even make its connection to Archie really known because I mean, it's not called like Archie. Like, Full House is just become Fuller House. Twin Peaks, I'm assuming, is just like Twin Peaks now, right?
Twinner Peaks.
It's Twinner Peaks.
Twinner Peakser.
But I mean, Riverdale, the focus of it is teens, and they are not trying to connect to the adults that are maybe even older than like you all are that read the first Archies. They're just trying to get into the minds of those new teens.
Yeah, you could make that show and not have it have anything to do with Archie by just changing the characters' names.
Right.
If you change their names, it would have no.
Yeah, the only connection it has to Archie now is that it takes place in Riverdale, and the characters' names and hair colors are the same.
Yeah. The names and hair colors have been changed to protect Archie. Because Sydney asked you to.
Because Sydney said please.
Sydney said please.
But do you think, like, because we have a lot of things that we were talking about, like, so many properties from the 90s are being either rebooted or continued. Like, do you think a part of that is because we live in like the streaming generation where you can watch a few episodes of Fuller House to be like, because it's the new thing, everyone's talking about it, and maybe you're gonna go, oh, I want to see the rest of it, and it's right there to go back and see the original show. Like, it's so much easier to create something new that's going to get people to maybe reinvest in all the old properties that have just been shelved.
That's really true. I mean, if you think about it, like, before there was Netflix or Hulu or whatever with like these large like assortments of full seasons of old TV shows, like all of Friends that you can watch anytime you want, or all of Full House, which actually is Full House available? You can probably watch all of Full House somewhere, right?
Yeah, I think so.
But I mean, you watch the reboots or you watch the old shows and you're like, wow, I want to see more of this. Like Gilmore Girls. I mean, I never heard of Gilmore Girls before it was on Netflix, and I watched it all on Netflix, and all of a sudden, because of the popularity it had on Netflix, even though it came out like 10 years ago, it got the reboot season, which is like really different in the sense that the focus of it is very different, and some of the plots they follow could not have been done in like the early 2000s, but also kind of has that same Fuller House feel where like they're making jokes that that are going to connect with the people who watched all of the original series.
I'm assuming a lot of coffee based jokes,
a lot of coffee based jokes, but a lot of like Luke being grumpy, a lot of that.
Many discussions involving Pop-Tarts, I think.
Yeah.
Pop-Tart related content.
Yeah, a lot of that.
Well, I think you're right, not just streaming stuff, but I was thinking along those lines, one that isn't from the 90s, but I did watch when I was younger, was Veronica Mars. And I think that the crowdfunding of the movie, probably drew in a lot of people who, because it like paid homage to the show and answered a lot of questions and tied up loose ends. But like you see that, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, I want to go back and watch this whole show.
Yeah. Because you all showed me
allowed that
the
to happen.
movie.
Yeah.
And then you were like, here's boxes of all the original seasons of Veronica Mars. Go have fun.
We gave you DVDs.
You did.
But that's why because the fans wanted it, like the old people like me who watched it when we were young wanted it so badly, and then they were like, well, if you want it, would you pay for it? And we're like, yeah, heck yeah. I'll throw some money your way so I can see a Veronica Mars movie. Absolutely.
But I mean, think about like the shows that would have been eventually like forgotten they even existed, and like my generation probably would have never watched if it wasn't for Netflix. I mean, I never would have watched Friends 6 times if it wasn't all on Netflix. Like I wouldn't have just like waited around for the episodes on repeat on like the main channels on our TV that show at like 4 a.m.
Yeah.
I would have never probably watched Full House except for the episodes that show on our TV at like 4 a.m.
What do you think? I've been really interested to see, and I don't know, Riley, if you were ever in contact with Will and Grace, if you ever saw any of it, or are you kind of familiar with it?
Mom has told me about it.
Okay.
That's it.
Because at the time, I watched Will and Grace back when it came out, and at the time, that was some groundbreaking television, because you didn't see, gay characters represented on TV very often, and certainly not like as a main character with like a deep, well-rounded, well-thought-out, fleshed-out character. Mm-hmm. There just weren't enough of those, certainly in TVs, movies, whatever. And so it was a very groundbreaking show to have a character like that on the show, and then to have like relationships and to have like physical interactions and stuff like that. It was a huge deal. Well, nowadays that's not exactly groundbreaking. So I wonder what the show's going to be like. I'm very interested to see like that the show could revolve around that a lot more, because it was such a unique voice in the television world. Mm-hmm. And nowadays I would say a show like Will and Grace, while I loved it, I thought it was a great show, it's not quite as unique.
Right.
That concept, that plot line, that thesis is not as unique as it was back then.
I think the main thing about all these reboots is that they're bringing a lot of those concepts that, I mean, even if it was in the original Will and Grace, that concept of like a gay main character or like a plot line that maybe would have been thought of as taboo at that time, that they're bringing in a lot of that into new reboots, just because the shows that are coming out now are doing that already. Mm-hmm. And it's like, if you're even wanting to be popular among the generation of people who were too young to have watched you when you first came out, you have to do something that will draw in attention from this new generation of people who's more open-minded and doesn't think of those things as like odd concepts or kind of like, oh wow, I can't believe they're doing that. Because if you aren't doing that, or your show just stands as one of those kind of like outdated, I mean, even Archie to a certain extent, the original comics that are kind of, you would probably show them to some teenagers now and they'd be like, well, this is, too wholesome. This is too pure
right.
for me.
Well, I mean, the original, way back in the day, the original Archie were just a bunch of like white, straight, cis, middle class kids.
Yeah.
I mean, they were all very homogenized, and that over time they introduced more diversity. Certainly.
Right.
I want to give Archie credit for that.
Yeah,
they did.
no, for sure.
They did over time. They introduced a lot more diversity in the comic, not just in Riverdale, but you're right. The original comic would not connect
and even
to
like
the world as it existed then, but as it is starting to be represented now.
And even you can see in the characters they brought into actual Archie comic books in the past few years. I mean, Kevin Keller and his storyline and all of those kinds of things shows that they're trying to come up with ways to appeal to a new generation of people, because I think there are almost people in my generation that maybe would see something like the original Archie and be like, this is terrible, and kind of like sexist and kind of like
sometimes
like I don't want to read this anymore because it kind of offends me, and also I can't connect to it at all. But I mean, then you bring in characters like that and it's like, wow, this is super cool. So then you do reboots of old TV shows because you're like, well, no one's gonna watch us if they realize that we're like outdated and the jokes you hear you won't connect with because we're making references that are like 20 years old. So you make a reboot so people are like, wow, this is really funny. Now I can see this updated version of it and see that this is what these characters are up to now, or like this is what the creators of this show are thinking they're doing in this time period, and I can go back and watch from 10 years ago.
Well, I have to ask, how much do you think of this weird reboot renaissance has to do less with appealing to the younger generations and more that is just, when Sadie and I were watching a lot of these things, we were in our teens. We didn't have a big buying power. I mean, we did, but it wasn't quite as much as now. We're in our 30s. We have real jobs and savings accounts. Like, making all of this material that pulls on our nostalgia dollar, there's kind of a dual win there. Like, we're gonna write something that might appeal to you, Riley, but package it in a way that's gonna draw in people from our generation. Like, I remember that show. Like, that's kind of it's a strong move.
It really is. It's a strong move, and that comes from somebody who now owns a T-shirt.
I was going to say you own a Gibbler style T-shirt.
Yeah, with a picture of Tina Gibbler on it that says, "Do it Gibbler style."
Yeah,
I'm sure it says. Yeah. No, I know what you mean, and I definitely fall prey to that too. Ghostbusters. I loved the new Ghostbusters. I absolutely adored it.
I did too.
I loved even more that Charlie now thinks that is what Ghostbusters is, and Charlie wanted a costume like Holtzman, and she said, "I want to be Holtzman," and she has a Ghostbusters costume, and I was like, I will spend these dollars to buy this costume. Right. Justin instantly was like, I got the proton pack, I got the trap, I got we got her a bunch of little ghosts and the whole thing. Instantly, I'll spend this money because it's drawing on something that I loved, and then at the same time, the reboot of Ghostbusters, the new Ghostbusters, represented women, and that was very exciting, especially for somebody with a daughter. So yeah, I mean, they know what they're doing.
I mean, much the same effect. Like the new Star Wars movies, they're still really good Star Wars movies that continue the story. They're not destroying anything that came before that we loved about it. They're just giving you more characters that maybe have a bit more of a modern appeal.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Yeah, for sure.
Your only choices as a female fan aren't like, I could dress up as Princess Leia or a sex slave. There's that one female Jedi. We saw her for a minute in the bad movies we don't talk about.
No, but it really is true. Or I guess, you could always dress up as Jar Jar Binks because,
what?
Wait a minute.
No, you can never do that.
I know. You shouldn't do that. Don't ever do that. No, but I know what you mean. It was very limiting, and again, it's not about the world has changed, so movies have changed to reflect it. It's no. Our world's always been super diverse, and it had a lot of different people in it. It's just that for a long time, none of those people were on TV or in movies or any popular media.
I mean, think about it, especially the new Star Wars, even though that probably was just a tiny bit before your all's generation. You all were definitely watching them when you all were teenagers and children. And
for sure.
I mean, think about the generation of people who were kids when they first came out. And I mean, now they are probably in the generation that are having kids, and they're like, here, come see this new Star Wars movie. And look, they just released all of the original Star Wars movies on DVD. Let's buy all of them and watch all of them together. And then let's buy you a Rey costume and also a BB-8 that you can control with your iPhone.
Well, that's the thing. I think it's something that you've maybe always loved, you could now be a part of in a different way, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, and I think that has to happen with, you talk about things like streaming things like Netflix and everything. All of culture is, instead of it passing us by and we move on to new things and different things, it's all available all the time. It's amassing. It's just building upon itself.
Yeah.
It's not, it doesn't continue to move on. It's all just piled up here around us. And so since the 90s and the 2000s, and now, the decade we're living in now, is just kind of all piled up in our computers and on our DVR boxes.
Yeah. I mean, I think the most important thing about all those old shows is something that I think I keep bringing up Friends just because I want someone out there to hear this and make a reboot of Friends.
Do you want a gritty Friends reboot?
I want a gritty Friends one last season reboot.
I think that's my life. Do you just want to come visit me up here in New York?
Yes.
Where they finally find a way to raise the rent on those rent controlled apartments that they have, and they all have to move out. Is that what you're looking for?
Where was the one with the bed bugs? Where was that episode? So I've lived that.
But I think Jennifer Aniston maybe said something once in an interview about a Friends reboot and said if you had tried to make Friends in this generation, it never would have happened, because if you think about all the interesting things that happened to them are happening they're having conversations in a coffee shop, or like they're all talking to each other, or like they're going on a trip or something. And if they were all sitting in that coffee shop today, they'd all be like on their phones. Like none of those things ever would have happened. So I think if you think about it, a lot of the shows that you all watched when you were growing up, or like I watched now that were way before my time, like Full House or Friends, never would have happened if this generation constantly would have been like, you know, technology driven and communication driven, because you wouldn't have had like, you know, the wholesome family of Tanners that lives with their Uncle Joey and you know, all those stories, or Friends or anything, because it would have all been focused on a totally different generation.
Because DJ would have been involved in a maple syrup heroin
ring.
Well, this is really interesting, actually, now that I think of it, Riley, because a lot of these things we're talking about are very much like day-to-day interpersonal drama. These shows, that's what they're based around. That was the sitcom era. And your generation doesn't really buy into that, I'm guessing, is what you're saying? Like, you don't enjoy that? And that is interesting.
I think you have to kind of, like, either make the characters all teenagers to get teenagers to watch them, or make it all about teenagers. Like, honestly, I think it's hard for teenagers now who are constantly watching like other people their age on social media, or like constantly just around people of similar like mindset. It's hard to show them something that was, you know, based on day-to-day like conversations and be like, this is entertainment.
Because you guys want, well, I mean, we've been talking about representation and why it matters, and so what you're saying is you want yourselves represented, not just shows about teenagers, but by, for, with teenagers, because that's what you get on YouTube.
Right.
Yeah, you know, you can already access that. And not only that, you guys don't live in the immediate world around you. You live, I mean, a large part of your existence on the internet.
Right.
So you're living in the world as a whole.
Yeah.
That's a much taller
the whole
order.
world.
Yeah. Well, it's a much taller order to entertain you.
For sure.
If that's the reality. That's very intimidating.
Boom.
Wow. I don't have a solution.
Riverdale season 2.
I don't think we're trying to solve the problem.
All I know is that the new Strawberry Shortcake sucks, and the new Teen Titans Go rules.
The new Teen Titans sucks.
Doesn't.
If you've seen the original Teen Titans, like what I grew up with, the new Teen Titans sucks.
And I've never liked Ben 10. I didn't get it then, and I still don't get it now.
Ben 10 was so good when I was a kid.
No, but you know, we've got a lot of probably good stuff coming up. There's a short Rocko's Modern Life movie apparently in the works.
I love Rocko's.
That'll be great.
There's a Hey Arnold movie, I believe, apparently in the works.
There you go.
DuckTales, yes.
With our buddy Lynn.
Yeah,
It's going to be excellent. And David Tennant.
And Riverdale season 2.
Yeah. I just...
You keep reading Archie comics, too.
No,
The
you could do that.
One. It's really good.
You know, I was really worried for a minute there. There were articles going around that there was going to be a Craft remake that would break my heart, because I think The Craft is still a perfect movie that is perfect and doesn't need to be messed with. But it's actually a 20 years later sequel.
Ooh.
Right? Oh man.
Okay.
I want a crazy Fairuza Balk just released from the mental ward. Like I want that character.
Yes. I want her back out there doing evil black magic. I'm so ready for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Ooh, that could be really good.
Right?
Yeah.
I was super bummed, and then before going to do this episode, I looked that up. I'm like, oh no. Don't worry, guys.
Well, sisters, this has been fun. Riley, you haven't sold me on Riverdale yet, but...
Well, I didn't think I was going to.
Wait.
I'll think about it.
Why has there not been a gritty reboot of Reboot? Right?
That was great. Where is Reboot?
Well, I want the reboot with the, with like Bob and Dot, but
This is an old cartoon.
Dark, and like maybe they explore the dark web, and
It's a cartoon that I know a lot of people must have watched, but for some reason it felt like something that only you and I knew about, Taylor.
all right, it was just too good to have not existed outside of my head, but it did, and that was bizarre to me.
And we loved it, and it was gone, and I haven't even been able to find it.
No, I mean, I know that they eventually came back and finished the show because it finished with the whole musical interpretation of the whole story that had like Sailor Moon references and Army of Darkness references. Like,
that was a great show.
It's a great show. It's in the name. Somebody reboot that.
Reboot that, and then my request is reboot Rescue Rangers, please.
Oh yes.
Reboot Rescue Rangers. Don't mess with it. Just bring it back.
No,
please.
absolutely.
I just want one last season of Friends.
And then all
I just
Riley
want to
wants
see
is
them
Friends.
now.
Just give her a Friends reboot. There's our
all I
request.
All right, there you go.
Universe.
Please. All right. Well, thank you, sisters. Thank you, listeners, for joining us again. If you want to send us comments or suggestions for future shows, you can at stillbuffering@maximumfun.org. You can tweet at us at stillbuff. You can join our Facebook group, Still Buffering on Facebook. I would recommend you do that. And you can visit MaximumFun.org to check out a lot of other wonderful podcasts on our network. And thank you to the Novellas for our theme song, Baby You Change Your Mind.
This has been Still Buffering, a sister's guide to teens through the ages. I am Riley Smurl.
I'm Sydney McElroy.
And I'm Taylor Smurl.
I am a teenager.
And I was 2. Du jour means friendship.
Du jour means friendship. Du jour means family.
Du jour means seatbelts.
What's Ben Affleck and or Drake up to?
What show should I be watching right now?
Should The Rock run for president? How about Oprah?
What's a great French film about lady cannibals?
Who's stronger, Luke Cage or Iron Fist?
For answers to these questions and so much more, come on over to Pop Rocket, a pop culture roundtable discussion that always has a fun, diverse panel talking about the stuff we love. Catch us every Wednesday on MaximumFun.org or wherever you decide to get your podcasts. I'm not going to judge.
MaximumFun.org.
Comedy and culture.
Artist owned.
Listener supported.